Well, hello everyone. This is al-Fadi, and I would like to introduce to you a brand new video series that we will be doing with our dear friend, Brother Mel. And as you know, of course, Mel focuses on historical criticism, or let's call it source criticism, when it comes to Islam. In fact, his website, or I would say his YouTube channel called Origins, and we'll let him talk a little bit about that. But today's episode deals with a new topic. We're going to call it Muhammad, an Arabian prophet or a Jewish Messiah. So that's basically the theme that will be followed in this particular video series. And with us here right now, joining us virtually, our brother Mel, to shed some light on this topic and also walk us through some overview of what we will be basically exposed to throughout this video series. Mel, welcome, brother. It's always good to have you.
It's great to be back. So I suppose we're kind of progressing on the path to discovering what happened in the early 7th century. We've got, thankfully, lots of clues to help us kind of unpack what likely happened.
And we're talking about Muhammad here, right? In this case, we're talking about Muhammad, and who is he?
Yeah, I suppose the key thing is once we start talking about Muhammad, we've already started to accept the standard Islamic narrative, because that's one particular vocalization of the word, which, for an English speaker, you would just simply see as MH, MD.
Right.
But that can be vocalized in lots of different ways.
That's correct.
For example, Mahmoud, Mahmet. And when we see the term used down through the centuries, whether it be in French or Latin, it's kind of obvious that before it ever became Muhammad, it was being used in a way like Mahmed or Mahmoud, So that in itself is kind of an indicator that there is an early tradition that's been changed, that's been hidden. And I think it's worth going back and throwing away all the assumptions and trying to figure out who this person is or was.
Mm-hmm.
And the mystery is really, is it one person or is it a kind of combining of different figures in that 7th century period? A lot of people say that, and they base this on the standard Islamic narrative, is that this figure was in a pagan society, and somehow through the revelation of an angel, he got all of this knowledge from Judaism and Christianity and so forth. Unless I accept Islam, I can't accept that idea. I just don't believe that there was a person who got a revelation from an angel. Not because I don't believe that can happen, but simply because the message doesn't sound true to me. The actual theology is convoluted and contradictory. So I have to go for a natural explanation. And so that leads me to look for the geographical place where someone could acquire that sort of knowledge. And it's probably no surprise to the viewers that I don't think it was in Mecca, which is essentially a place in the middle of a desert with no culture, no society, no libraries, none of the things you'd expect to have a person who has all of this knowledge. So that's really the focus of the series. We're looking at some of the clues found in the Islamic narrative, assuming that even a false narrative will let a few things slip through the gaps. So the analogy I'm going to use in this series is that it's a glitch in the matrix. Because for those who may have seen the movie, even if you create a hologram, something is going to slip through. Something is going to kind of indicate, actually, there's another story behind all of this. So this isn't necessarily saying, we can now trust the standard Islamic narrative. No, it's more a case of even a fraudster can let things slip. They can make a mistake. And I'm here to kind of just zero in on those little mistakes where they've revealed a little bit too much to indicate there's actually another story. And that's what I'm hoping to do in the series.
And tell us also about the connection between Judaism and this approach that we are taking here for this particular video series. Like, for instance, you talk about the Jewish struggle between when it comes to the Talmud, the Babylonian Talmud, and all that kind of stuff. And then you mentioned something about Salman al-Farsi, of course, but from a Jewish perspective. If you can shed some light on that, because we will zoom in on each one of these topics separately.
Yeah. So in terms of the Talmud, in the early part of the 7th century, there was a big dispute between different sects of Judaism. There were some that leaned towards the old Talmud, which is called the Jerusalem Talmud. And in that sort of point of view, they don't particularly like oral traditions being added to their understanding of the Torah. They want to go back as far as possible to like a pure understanding of the Torah, whereas those over in the east, in Iraq, they tend to go for the Babylonian Talmud, where there's lots of oral traditions. And that seems to be the backdrop to the Quran. As we'll see, there seems to be reference to particularly those Jewish leaders in Iraq. And we'll see them very clearly. Sometimes they're going to be really obvious. And for example, the Galut, we're going to see what is meant by the Galut. It's a really prominent Jewish leader, as we'll see, but it's according to standard Islamic narrative, they've come up with a completely different understanding of it, which I consider, when you look at the context, is wrong. So that's going to be a kind of bit of an eye opener. In terms of Salman al-Farsi, I'm going to suggest that he is an exilarch. And I found some examples of glitches here where the standard Islamic narrative has actually let the cat out of the bag here with Salman al-Farsi and given us enough clues to who he was. In fact, actually, it tells us exactly who this person is. And I can't believe they've let this bit through. The sieve, or, they should have got rid of this if they wanted to keep their story straight, but they've given us enough to actually place him in a particular context so that we can identify who he is. And it will be a surprise, I'm sure, to many people that the person who is referred to as Salman al-Farsi is a Jewish exilarch, and that's huge. Why is Muhammad, supposedly an Arabian prophet, a companion of a Jewish exilarch who lives way up in Iraq? It makes no sense. For much of his life, he was in around Jerusalem, and then later in his life, he moves over to somewhere in the vicinity of Baghdad. So that doesn't fit in with the overall story. So that's kind of where we're heading in this series.
That's wonderful. Also, I mean, we still have time to wrap up this introduction to the series. Again, everyone who's joining us right now, we are talking about a brand new video series with Brother Merrill. We will be talking where we will cover some different views concerning the person of this, let's call him, according to Islam, they call him Muhammad, but obviously it's Mahmed, that's the word that we will be zooming in on. You mentioned something interesting that we will also highlight during this series about the word Uzair, as mentioned in the Quran, where in fact it could be Aziz, actually. And you even provide a manuscript evidence to support that. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so according to the standard Islamic narrative, the Jews believed that Ezra was the son of God.
That's what the Quran says. Correct, yeah.
That's what the Quran says, or at least the version of the Quran we have today. But actually, it never made any sense, because if you go and ask any Jewish person, is this what you believe? Or is there any record of Jews ever believing this? They'll say, no, this is nonsense.
That's right.
So there's a big question mark over that. That's nothing new. But as someone pointed out to me, if you add a dot above the word, a diacritical mark, suddenly you find that the word is Aziz. Now, the word Aziz means strong, like a strong figure, but it also has a similar meaning as the word Mahmed. So it can mean, for example, the praiseworthy or the lovely. There's a bit of an overlap. It's another messianic title. It's a less well-known one, but it's one that can be used. Probably used more often in centuries ago, but it's fallen out of use. But if you look at the context in the surah where it's mentioned, it talks about the Jews say that Aziz is the son of God, whereas the Christians say the Messiah is the son of God. Well, if we know that it's Aziz and not Uzair or Ezra, now it makes sense. So you're talking about two messianic titles, or two terms for the Messiah. You have the Christian one and the Jewish one. And now it makes sense. It's like perfectly intelligible. Whereas this alternative name, Uzair, that even the translators can't make sense of it, so they have to turn it into Ezra to make some sense out of it, But actually, it's not Ezra, and we've got manuscript evidence to actually point this out. Now, what's really interesting was that I started with the hypothesis that it was probably Aziz first, and to my surprise, Odin Lafontaine, who's a French scholar, made contact with me, and he said, "Hey Mel, do you realize there's an old manuscript that has Aziz in the text?" When something like that happens, it confirms we're on the right track.
That's right.
And so it means that for whatever reason, probably because there was a lack of consistency with the diacritical marks, you currently have Qurans that are different from the early Qurans, and this is not insignificant. There's a huge difference in meaning because of just one dot of a difference.
And
it's actually a world of difference.
That manuscript is housed at Corpus Quranicum, if I remember.
That's correct, yeah.
Yes, so people can see it. It's not like you're disclosing something that only you or someone else have the access to, but people can go and view it. And hopefully when we talk about that, we will shed the light on it. So, brother, that's exciting. I'm looking forward, of course, to the start of this series. What would be the first topic that we are going to zoom in next episode?
So the first topic we're going to look at is the different Jewish leaders that are mentioned in the Quran. Some of these are going to be obvious and some of them are going to be a little bit coded, but it's going to be an eye-opener to see what is actually going on. So we can see then that it's about a debate among Jews rather than a pagan talking about Jews. It's quite a different take on it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And again, everyone, thank you for joining us. You've heard this basically introduction, and next episode of this series, we are going to begin our series by talking about some of the Jewish hierarchy or Jewish leaders, and we'll take it from there. When it comes to the person of Muhammad, are we talking about an Arabian prophet here, or are we talking about a Jewish Messiah? And we will present the evidence to support this contradiction. Until next time, everyone have a blessed day. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, share, and comment. And ring the bell so you will be notified when we release new content. Our mission is to reach Muslims with the gospel of Jesus Christ and help Christians engage with their Muslim neighbors. If you want to join us in this life-changing work, please support us on patreon.com/CIRA International, or just click on the link below.